How do we navigate a world just brimming with conflicting ideas? Especially when those ideas touch on, well, life's most profound questions. Things like our purpose, the ripple effects of our choices, maybe even our destiny. It's a timeless human puzzle, isn't it?
It really is a fundamental challenge.
So today we're embarking on a deep dive into this extraordinary ancient text. It's called the Apaṇṇakasuttaṃ, often known as the Ascertained Doctrine. And our mission, really, is to uncover a remarkably pragmatic framework. It's almost like a risk assessment approach for evaluating these big beliefs and ultimately choosing a path that genuinely cultivates long-term well-being and happiness.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the sutta itself, it originates from a specific occasion. Bhagavan Gautama, the Buddha, visits Sālā. This was a village of Brahmin householders in Kosala. And these villagers, they approached him feeling a bit adrift, They expressed this deep need for guidance, for a teacher they could really place confident faith in, but, well, they hadn't found one yet.
Right, so they're searching. And it's right there, in that context of uncertainty, that Gautama introduces what he calls the Apaṇṇakasuttaṃ.
Exactly, the undoubtedly true or certain doctrine.
But what's striking, as you said, is that this isn't about demanding blind faith, not at all. Instead, he presents it as this practical, almost empirical method for figuring out a truly beneficial way to live your life.
Precisely. It's a method for discernment.
So the sutta really kicks off by tackling some of life's biggest philosophical divides, doesn't it? It lays out these diametrically opposed viewpoints on really fundamental aspects of existence and morality.
Yes, exactly. It opens with a very stark contrast. The first pair of views, and these center on, well, life after death and the whole notion of moral responsibility. So on one side, you have what we might call the nihilistic view. This perspective basically asserts there's no given, meaning no real consequence from offerings, sacrifices, or even good or bad deeds. No fruit, as the text says.
No consequence at all.
According to this view, no. Those holding it believe there's no this world or another world in a meaningful sense. No traditional bonds like mother or father that matter cosmically, no spontaneously reborn beings, and no truly enlightened individuals who actually comprehend both realms. It's a pretty complete rejection of spiritual consequence.
Wow. Okay. And the other side?
Then directly opposing that is the affirmative view. They hold that given does exist, that good and bad deeds absolutely do bear fruit. There is this world and another world. There are mother and father, spontaneously reborn beings, and yes, indeed, enlightened individuals who have realized both worlds.
That's quite a chasm between those two. So how do these opposing worldviews actually translate into behavior? I mean, what are the practical implications of believing one or the other?
Well, the sutta makes it very clear. Those who embrace that nihilistic view, believing there are no real consequences, they tend to engage in what the text calls unwholesome actions.
Okay, like what?
Misconduct of body, speech, and mind. And why? Well, because they simply don't perceive any danger or any negative repercussions down the line.
Makes sense, if you believe that.
Right. And this perspective is specifically labeled wrong view. And the sutta says it sets off this kind of chain reaction. It leads to wrong intentions, wrong speech, even opposition to the wise, self-praise, putting others down. It essentially cultivates a whole host of unskillful mental states.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting, right? This is where the sutta introduces its, well, ingenious pragmatic test.
Yeah.
But what a prudent person would carefully consider. It's almost like a spiritual risk assessment.
It truly is a very practical calculus. Let's walk through the prudent person's logic as the text lays it out. So if you adopt the nihilistic view, view A, scenario 1, if there is no other world, maybe this view is actually true, well, you'd be safe after death, theoretically. But, and this is crucial, in this life, you are condemned by the wise. They see you as immoral, holding wrong views, a nihilist. Your reputation suffers.
Right. So even if you're right, you lose out in the present.
Exactly. Now, scenario 2. If there is an other world, meaning this nihilistic view is false, well then you will undoubtedly suffer after death. Unhappy states, maybe hell. And critically, you are still condemned by the wise in this life anyway.
Ah, so you lose both ways in that scenario.
Precisely. The sutta concludes that adopting this doctrine is poorly adopted. It misses the path to skillful states. It's basically a lose-lose situation. You lose in terms of immediate social standing and potentially face terrible future suffering.
Okay. That's pretty stark. What about the other side, the affirmative view?
Right. Now, consider adopting the affirmative view, view B.
Okay.
Scenario 1. If there is another world and this view is true, well, you'll go to a good destination, a heavenly world after death, And very importantly, you are praised by the wise in this life as virtuous, holding right views, being an affirmer.
So win both now and potentially later.
Correct. Now, scenario 2. What if there is no other world? What if this affirmative view turns out to be false? Well, you are still praised by the wise in this life for being virtuous. You haven't actually lost anything fundamental by choosing a skillful path.
That's compelling.
It is. The Sutta concludes this doctrine is well adopted, it succeeds, and it avoids unskillful states. It's framed as a clear win-win. You gain respect and live well now, and you potentially secure future happiness.
So the core takeaway here, it seems, isn't about forcing you to accept a specific philosophical truth you might doubt.
Not at all.
It's more about providing this practical guide, almost like a low-risk, high-reward strategy. Choose the path with the best possible outcomes, both now and, well, potentially later, regardless of absolute certainty.
That's the essence of it, is pragmatic wisdom.
That's a really powerful framework. And it's fascinating how this same pragmatic logic, this calculus of risk versus reward, is then just consistently applied to other really foundational ideas, like the reality of action and its consequences, karma.
Precisely. That brings us neatly to the second pair of views. These grapple with the reality of action itself, what's often called karma.
Okay.
So you have the no-action view, the Akiriyavada. This fundamentally asserts that absolutely no evil or merit is produced by any action.
None at all. Even extreme actions.
The Sutta uses incredibly vivid examples to make the point. They claim that even horrific acts like, say, killing everyone on the south bank of the Ganges produces no evil. And conversely, acts of incredible generosity or self-restraint on the north bank produce no merit. It's a total denial of ethical consequence to action.
Wow. Okay. And the opposing view?
In direct opposition, you have the action view, the Akiriyavada. This maintains that, yes, harmful actions do produce evil results, and wholesome actions do produce merit.
Right. Cause and effect applied to ethics.
Exactly. And, just as before, the Sutta applies the identical prudent person's reasoning. It walks through the same logic. Choosing the action view, believing your actions matter, is the path that garners praise in this life and holds the potential for positive outcomes after death.
While the no-action view?
The no-action view, again, puts both your immediate reputation and your potential future well-being at risk. So, pragmatically, it's presented as the clearly inferior choice.
It's almost like this Sutta is saying, look, even if you're not 100% sure about the cosmic details, why wouldn't you bet on the option that demonstrably leads to a better life right now? Better for you, better for how you're seen by wise people.
That's a very good way to summarize the underlying logic.
And it doesn't stop there, does it? It takes this one step further, extending the same thinking to the very bedrock concept of cause and effect itself.
Indeed. That's the third pair. The principle of cause and effect, known in Pali as Hetupakkaya.
Okay.
So the no-cause view, or Hetuggavada, posits that there's actually no real cause or condition for the defilement or the purification of beings. It's a kind of fatalism.
Meaning things just happen, no agency.
Pretty much. They believe all beings are essentially powerless, without real strength or energy or agency, and they're just determined by destiny or chance or nature, experiencing pleasure and pain in these predetermined cycles or classes of existence.
And the alternative?
Conversely, the with-cause view, Hetuvada, affirms that there is cause and condition, both for defilement and for purification.
So agency comes back into the picture.
Yes. They believe beings do possess strength, energy, human might. And while, yes, they might be affected by external forces like destiny or chance or nature, they aren't entirely predetermined by them. There's room for effort.
And the pragmatic test.
It remains completely consistent. The prudent person's analysis leads to the same conclusion. Believing in cause and effect, believing your efforts matter, and then acting skillfully based on that belief that's presented as the safer, more beneficial choice.
Right. It secures positive outcomes in this life, potentially beyond.
Exactly. Whereas the no-cause view, like the others before it, leads you down a path that looks like a lose-lose proposition from this pragmatic standpoint.
It's really fascinating how this sort of builds this foundation, this robust ethical framework based on essentially minimizing risk and maximizing well-being. But then it seems to shift gears slightly, doesn't it? Does it move beyond just risk avoidance towards something more like spiritual cultivation?
Exactly. That's a great observation. Once that foundation is laid, the Sutta applies this same kind of analytical lens, but to more subtle internal states. It starts asking not just what keeps you safe from bad outcomes, but what genuinely leads towards liberation, towards deeper spiritual progress.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, this brings us to the fourth pair of views. These concern what are called immaterial attainments, or arupa in Pali. These are very high states of meditation beyond ordinary sensory experience.
Right.
So one view asserts there's no complete attainment of these immaterial spheres possible. Maybe they don't exist or aren't reachable. The other view believes, yes, there's complete attainment possible.
And the prudent person test here, does it declare one true?
This is where it gets really interesting. No, it doesn't. The prudent person here explicitly acknowledges, I have not seen this myself, nor do I know this fully. There's an admission of the limits of personal verification for such states.
Okay, so what does it say?
Instead of declaring truth, the sutta points out the practical implications for one's inner life right now. It notes that engagement with form, rupadhikaran, and form here, means not just physical stuff, but the whole realm of sensory experience, material existence, our attachments to it.
Okay.
That this engagement inevitably leads to conflict and suffering. Think about it. Taking up sticks and weapons, quarrels, disputes, arguments, slander, lying so often these stem from our clinging to or aversion from forms, from things we sense or possess.
That makes sense.
So the sutta says, understanding this inherent friction with form, one naturally practices for disenchantment, dispassion, and cessation of forms. You work on letting go of that entanglement.
So regardless of whether those super high immaterial states are ultimately real or attainable?
Exactly. Regardless of which view about them is true, the practice itself, the practice of disengaging from the complexities and attachments of the world of form, that practice is inherently beneficial. It leads towards inner peace, towards liberation from that kind of suffering right here and now.
So it's less about the absolute theoretical truth of these higher states, and much more about cultivating the mindset, the inner practice that frees you from suffering in your current experience.
Precisely. It shifts the focus to the path, to the practice.
And this principle extends even further, doesn't it? To the very idea of existence itself.
It does. That takes us to the fifth and final pair of views presented in this section. This pair addresses the cessation of becoming, or bhavanirodha, ultimate liberation.
Okay.
So one view states there's no complete cessation of becoming, meaning the cycle of birth, death, rebirth, it's endless. There's no ultimate exit.
Rather grim view.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
The opposing view claims there is complete cessation of becoming. That ultimate liberation from the cycle is possible, nibbana.
And again, the prudent person doesn't necessarily claim to know which is true.
Correct. Again, no dogmatic declaration. Instead, the sutta highlights the nature or the tendency of holding these views.
How so?
It says the view that there's no cessation of becoming, that view is inherently, quote, near craving, attachment, delight, and clinging to becoming. Holding that view keeps you psychologically bound to the very forces that perpetuate the cycle of suffering.
Okay, it reinforces the problem.
Right. Whereas the view that cessation of becoming does exist, that liberation is possible, well, that view is inherently far from craving, attachment, delight, and clinging. It naturally orients the mind away from those binding forces.
I see. So the practical wisdom is clear again.
Yes. The sutta guides you towards adopting the view that actually facilitates the path of disenchantment, dispassion, and cessation of becoming, because that is the path to liberation from suffering itself. It's about choosing the mental framework, the belief system that enables your freedom, that points you in the right direction.
It's really compelling how the sutta takes these, very high-level philosophical debates and then grounds them so firmly in tangible reality. It does this by categorizing 4 distinct types of individuals, right? It's almost like it's saying, okay, look at the lives people actually lead, and you'll see these different views and their consequences in action.
Exactly. It paints these really vivid pictures of the consequences of different fundamental approaches to life. So the first type described is the self-tormentor, apaṇṇakasuttaṃ.
Okay. What does that entail?
This isn't just about, say, accidental physical pain. It describes an individual who is consumed by practices of extreme self-mortification. Often, this is fueled by a belief that causing suffering to oneself in this life somehow purifies or atones for things or leads to some higher state.
So like extreme ascetic practices.
Yes. Think of ascetics enduring really extreme hardships, like the examples given, being naked in all weather, licking hands clean instead of washing, living on minimal scraps, or adopting various physical austerities, maybe even like some extreme diets today, believing this hardship itself is the path. Their suffering is largely self-inflicted based on a particular view.
Okay, that's one type.
Then second, you have the other tormentor, paṇṇakasuttaṃ. This person is defined primarily by inflicting suffering on others.
Right.
The Sutta gives examples like butchers, hunters, fowlers, fishermen, torturers, executioners, basically. Anyone whose livelihood or chosen way of life involves causing pain, harm, or death to other beings. Their actions are often about asserting power or gaining something material through the suffering of others.
Okay, clear contrast there. What's the third type?
The third type kind of combines elements of both. It's described as both self and other tormentor.
How does that work?
This often applies to powerful figures. The text mentions a king or a wealthy anointed warrior, someone with significant social power. They might conduct these grand, elaborate sacrifices that involve the mass killing of animals inflicting suffering on others.
Okay.
But simultaneously, they might coerce their subjects. The text mentions slaves, messengers, workers into undertaking incredibly arduous, painful, often terrifying and unrewarding tasks related to these rituals or just their rule in general. So they are inflicting suffering directly and also causing suffering through their demands, perhaps even suffering themselves through the intensity or cost of the rituals.
I see. So harming self through practice and others through power.
In a way, yes, it's a combination.
And the fourth type, this must be the ideal one.
Yes, the fourth and the ideal type presented is neither self nor other tormentor. This individual lives a life that the Sutta describes using terms like cool, extinguished, blissful, and possessing a Brahma-like self. They experience profound happiness and peace in this very life without causing harm.
And the prime example is?
The Sutta holds up the Tathagata, the Buddha himself, as the ultimate embodiment of this fourth type. His path is the model.
Okay, so what does that path look like, according to the Sutta here?
Well, the path of the Tathagata, as detailed right here in the Apaṇṇakasuttaṃ, involves first abandoning the 5 hindrances.
The 5 hindrances. Remind us what those are.
Yes, these aren't just abstract ideas. They're seen as real mental obstacles that keep us stuck, keep us from clarity and peace. They are sensual lust or desire, ill will or aversion, sloth and torpor, that heavy dullness, restlessness and remorse or worry, and finally, skeptical doubt, the kind that paralyzes action.
Right. Imagine shedding those mental weights.
It's the foundation. And beyond abandoning those hindrances, the path involves attaining the 4 jhanas.
Jhanas, meditative states, right?
Deeply absorbed meditative states, yes. They represent a kind of profound mental stillness and unification where the mind becomes incredibly focused, stable, and clear. It's often described like turning down the volume on all the usual mental chatter and external distractions until you experience these distinct levels or states characterized by profound joy, pleasure, tranquility, and eventually a perfect, balanced mental equanimity.
Wow. Okay. Deeper concentration.
Very deep. And building upon that deep tranquility, that stable base of concentration, the Tathagata develops what are called the 3 knowledges, or tvija.
3 knowledges, what are they?
The first is the recollection of past lives. This isn't just vague remembering, but gaining a clear, detailed understanding of many, many previous existences, seeing the patterns, the continuity of being. The second is the divine eye. This is described as the ability to see beings passing away and reappearing throughout different realms according to their karma. Truly seeing, the low and the excellent, the beautiful and the ugly, the fortunate and the unfortunate, understanding the intricate workings of cause and effect playing out across countless lifetimes.
A kind of cosmic perspective on karma.
You could say that. And the third knowledge, which is the ultimate achievement, is the destruction of the mental defilements or outflows.
The destruction of defilements, that sounds final.
It is. This is where one truly directly comprehends the 4 noble truths. Suffering, its origin, craving, its cessation, and the path leading to its cessation. Through this profound, direct insight, the mind is utterly liberated from the deepest, most fundamental defilements, the asabhas of sensual desire, the craving for continued existence or becoming, and fundamental ignorance.
And the result.
This leads to the profound, unequivocal realization, often stated as, birth is destroyed, the holy life has been fulfilled, what had to be done has been done, there is no more for this state of being. It signifies the attainment of nibbana, the ultimate freedom from the entire cycle of suffering.
So, bringing it all back then, the core lesson, the real takeaway from the Dhamma seems to be this. It offers this remarkably powerful, really pragmatic framework for evaluating beliefs. It's not about demanding you accept dogma. It's about using a clear-eyed, practical risk assessment. It guides us towards choices that genuinely promise well-being, both in this life and potentially beyond, even if we don't have absolute philosophical certainty on every point.
That truly is the essence. The sutta beautifully illustrates how our fundamental views, what we choose to believe at that deep level, inevitably translate into our actions. And those actions, day by day, directly shape the kind of life we actually lead and the outcomes we experience, both internally and externally. It's really about moving from these abstract philosophical positions to concrete, genuinely beneficial ways of being in the world.
So thinking about all this, what really stands out to you from this deep dive? How might applying this kind of pragmatic risk assessment to your own beliefs, or maybe even just to your daily actions, how might that change your approach to decisions, big or small? Could choosing that safer or more skillful belief, the one that leads towards less harm and more well-being, even in areas where you lack absolute certainty, could that actually be the most liberating path of all? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the ascertained doctrine.